Boris was a veteran whose life had been deeply marked by his service in Afghanistan. At first, he had been filled with pride to serve his country, feeling part of something greater than himself. However, his wife didn't share his enthusiasm. They were newly married with their first baby on the way when Boris was first deployed, a situation that overwhelmed her deeply. Upon returning from his initial deployment unscathed, Boris's wife pleaded with him to leave the army. Taking care of their daughter Alenka, now a year old, had become too much for her alone. Reluctant to retire, Boris embarked on a second deployment, but this time, luck was not on his side. Tragedy struck during a routine check of their assigned area when an IED detonated unexpectedly. Boris woke up in a hospital, grievously injured and missing a leg, with shrapnel embedded in his other leg, posing a constant risk of infection. Meanwhile, back home, a second tragedy unfolded. Boris had been trying to reach his wife without success until his mother finally called to deliver the devastating news. His wife had disappeared, leaving Alenka in her grandmother's care. Overwhelmed by Boris' injuries and the realization of the responsibility ahead, she had fled. Boris was shattered by his wife's abandonment. Now disabled and responsible for his daughter's upbringing alone, he knew he needed to return to Alenka as soon as possible. The little girl had already endured so much. After completing his physiotherapy, Boris reunited with Alenka at his mother's house. Her joy at seeing her father strengthened Boris's determination to be the best father he could. However, he soon realized that the city was not the ideal place for Alenka to grow up. Wanting her to experience freedom and nature, they packed their belongings and moved to a small village nestled in the mountains. From the moment they arrived, Boris knew he had made the right decision. Alenka reveled in the open space and freedom of their garden, and Boris found a cozy cottage on the outskirts of the village. He cherished accompanying Alenka to school every day, ensuring she had a nurturing environment where she could thrive. In their new village home, Boris found solace and purpose, determined to create a bright future for his daughter despite the challenges they had faced. Their tranquil life in the quaint village unfolded gracefully for Boris and Alenka. Boris tended to a small plot of land to sustain them, and they were warmly embraced by the community. Yet, amidst the peace, Boris grappled with a persistent concern: Alenka's loneliness. In an ideal scenario, he would have welcomed more children with his wife, providing Alenka with siblings. However, fate had dictated otherwise. Alenka, ever resourceful, proposed a simple solution. She wanted a dog. This request, though seemingly straightforward, stirred painful memories for Boris. Serge's behavior was unusual and alarming as he bounded around Alenka, whimpering as if sensing something deeply wrong. Alenka, growing increasingly anxious, hurried home with Serge, only to find her father lying in bed, alarmingly pale and barely responsive. Boris, weakened by what appeared to be a severe infection in his leg, struggled to even acknowledge her presence. He had once trained a loyal companion during his military service, and its passing had left him devastated. Unwilling to relive that heartache or see his daughter endure similar pain, Boris gently denied her request for a pet. Yet destiny had other plans in store for them. One Sunday during their routine walk, a faint cry caught their attention. Following the sound, they discovered a surprising sight: a tiny gray bundle of fur on the railway tracks. Before Boris could react, Alenka rushed forward and scooped up the tiny creature. In her arms lay the smallest wolf pup Boris had ever seen. Moved by his daughter's immediate connection to the pup, Boris couldn't bear to separate them. Without a word, Alenka began walking home, the wolf pup nestled securely in her arms. As days turned into weeks, the wolf pup named Serge grew rapidly. Alenka and Serge became inseparable companions, with Serge faithfully following her wherever she went. For Boris, seeing the bond between them brought a sense of reassurance. He knew Alenka would always be protected with Serge by her side. He invested time in training Serge, confident in the wolf's intelligence and the strength of their connection. Little did he anticipate how crucial Serge's presence would soon become. Every day, Serge dutifully trotted into town to meet Alenka as she returned from school. A routine that not only comforted Alenka, but also eased Boris' daily struggles with his crutch. However, one fateful day, as Serge approached Alenka, something was clearly amiss. Alenka, familiar with her father's bouts of illness, checked his fever and realized he urgently needed medication. Hastily, she dashed into town seeking help, but no one had the specific medicine Boris required. Returning home in desperation, she turned to her father for guidance. Despite Boris' reassurances that the fever would pass, his condition worsened rapidly. As hours dragged on, Boris slipped in and out of consciousness, prompting Alenka to resort to splashing him with cool water to keep him awake. Desperate for a solution, Boris weakly gestured for paper and pen. With trembling hands, he wrote a note and folded it, instructing Alenka to seek help from passersby on the highway. Before Alenka could act on her father's instructions, Serge seized the folded note with his jaws and darted off towards the highway. Their fate intervened in the form of David, a kind-hearted stranger who took the time to read the note despite the unusual circumstances. Recognizing the urgency, David didn't hesitate. He swiftly returned to his car, drove to Boris's house, and assisted Alenka in getting her father into his vehicle. Without delay, they sped towards the hospital, where Boris received the critical medical attention he urgently needed. Serge's swift action and David's compassionate response were pivotal. If not for the wolf's intervention, Boris might not have survived the night. It was a testament to Serge's loyalty and love, repaying the kindness shown to him by the family who had taken him in. In the aftermath of this harrowing experience, they all realized the profound bond they shared with Serge, whose loyalty and instinct had saved Boris' life. It was an unforgettable event that underscored the remarkable connection between humans and animals, leaving an indelible mark on them all.